Well, a lot has happened since we last had the opportunity to talk. I guess it was about 6 weeks ago. An awful lot of things have transpired. Anytime you start as a new head coach, there's a lot of things to do. There's a lot of things you need to get done, and you've got to hire a staff. You've got to get into recruiting. You've got to try and find a way to meet the present team that you had. I mean, there were a number of recruiting dinners that I went to that I'm introducing myself to our own players. And it's like, no, Coach, I already committed. I already signed. I'm one of us. It's like, oh, well, I'm glad you're here anyway. And moving on to the next one, there's just so many people and so many things, so many people to meet and so many different things to do in the process as a new head coach. From a calendar standpoint, once we got hired, we immediately jumped into recruiting, and that has pretty much been taking all of our efforts. It's been hard recruiting because you're going into 8 or 9 schools during the course of the day. You're trying to get to know the high school coaches. You're trying to start to follow up a little bit on junior recruiting, and then at the same time, after school, you're trying to do 2 or 3 home visits in the area. So there was an awful lot of things that we were trying to get done during the recruiting process, and it's pretty much been 24/7 that we've been doing it since we've been hired. And now that we've been taken off the road today, with today being the first part of a dead period when we're not allowed to recruit, today we met as a staff on our winter workouts. We met on our new walk-on process. We'll have a walk-on meeting today, and so we kind of are turning the page now and starting a new chapter, which is the chapter about what we got to get done here on campus. First thing I had to do when I was put in place and talking a little bit about the assistants is that's primarily what this was about. There's a number of things that you're looking for in your staff. There's a lot of different variables that you want in your staff. You have experience, age, pay scales, recruiting backgrounds, a lot of different things that go into it. And I said in my press conference there were 3 things that I was looking to make sure were covered when we first got hired in putting the 9 coaches together. One, I wanted some Louisiana Tech flavor. I wanted some Louisiana Tech background, some people that knew about the school, the traditions, the history, the winning ways that were done here was an important piece of this staff. I wanted Louisiana connections with people that know the state from a recruiting standpoint, have been in the state before, that I thought would be very beneficial. And then I wanted some people that I could put in place that I had been around that I knew were really good football coaches. And I'm really excited about the group that we've put together right now, and introducing the staff, I guess, is going through it. I mean, one of the first people that I hired when I came in here, within probably the first couple of days of being here after interviewing and talking with him, was Stan Egan. And one of the first places, because I felt he brought familiarity, he brought Louisiana Tech background, and he also brought stability in recruiting. To give you an idea, junior recruiting is well underway at this point. And so when you come in January trying to build relationships, you're about 11 months behind. And so I thought it was really important that for Stan Egan to be able to carry over some of the consistency with a number of the players that had already committed here. I ended up hiring Jeff Kuntz. At that time I had hired the second person that I hired was David Gibbs. I had hired David Gibbs as the defensive coordinator, and then after meeting and interviewing and working with for about a week, I hired Jeff Kuntz, I think a young coach, really energetic, enthusiastic, knowledgeable. I think he's going to be a shining star in this business. I think he's got a bright future with everywhere that he's been. He just really impressed me. So we hired him on defense, and then Ronnie Bradford with the secondary and special teams. And I was looking for a guy that had done it before. When you work with the defensive backs, I think one thing that is really important is experience. Somebody that's played the position, and Ronnie played for 10 years in the secondary before he had an opportunity to coach and be a special teams coordinator in the NFL. And I felt really fortunate to have the ability to hire him. And at the time, I thought I was done at defense with those 4, putting those 4 in place. And that's kind of what each one of them brought to the table a little bit. I got started on the offensive side of the ball, and Tony Peterson really excited me. He comes from one of the higher-ranked offenses in the country. He runs the same system. He's had an incredible amount of success as a coordinator at Minnesota. He played the game. He not just doesn't coach it, but he played the game. He teaches the game. He's coordinated before, and he's done it at a high level and had success everywhere he's been. I've known Tony a long time through connections in this business, and we've always joked about it. It was like, one day we're going to work together. Well, that joke came to fruition this year as we're having the opportunity to work together. But I'm really excited about what he brings to the table, because I don't want to change a lot of what we did offensively. There will definitely be some change, a couple little changes, but I want to keep the basic system in place, and this is exactly what Tony Peterson has run the last couple of years at Marshall. Going down the line from there, again, with Louisiana Tech background, I started looking into some coaches that had played at Louisiana Tech, which you start doing some research, you find there's a number of guys out there in the coaching profession that I had the opportunity to talk to. But the more people I talked to about Tim Rattay, and the more you really started to dig into him as a person, you can't find anybody to say a negative word about Tim Rattay. His background here, his character, the way he carried himself, the way he represented this school as a player to the NFL, to playing for 8 years in the NFL, and even getting in and kind of cutting his teeth in coaching in this, was it the World League or whatever that league was? The UFL, one of those leagues, and talked to just a number of people that he worked with and how impressed they were with his work habits, because it doesn't always carry over from a player to a coach. And I thought he really did a nice job, and had a chance to interview him. Brought him in here, really excited to be able to add him. He'll coach the outside receivers. I hired Joe Sloan, who played for me at East Carolina, was a graduate assistant for me at South Florida. I've been around a long time. He knows my system. He knows how I like to do things, and he's always impressed me with his work habits, just his kind of go-get-em attitude. And I think he's a great addition to the staff. Then as I was looking for an offensive line coach, again, being not restrictive, but really limiting the pool to what we do as an offense, I wanted somebody that had been there before, somebody that had been in this type of system, somebody that was in the pass pro mindset of what we had done, because that's really the thing that has made us a little bit unique here at Louisiana Tech, has been the technique that we use from a pass pro standpoint. So Matt Moore was at Middle Tennessee, had been at Texas Tech for a long time. I hired him as the offensive line coach and the assistant head coach. Really impressed with him. I know the dreams and goals that he has. He wants to be a head coach one day, and I think part of that was the lure and attraction to come here, is to have the opportunity to be the assistant head coach and coach the offensive line here at Louisiana Tech. Jabbar Jalouk was one of the guys that, to me, really brought some great flavor with the state of Louisiana, obviously with his success at Carr High School in New Orleans. And going into a high school with Jabbar Jalouk in New Orleans is like traveling around with Michael Jackson. It is truly a sight to see. He walks into every school he goes into. It's not only the faculty, the teachers, the administration, but it's the students. He seems, and I hadn't even been in Carr High School with him yet. We went in all the other schools in New Orleans, and just really impressed with what he brings to the table. I think he'll do a great job. I was really impressed with the way he handles people and the way that he deals with people, and that really impressed me, and one of the reasons that we put him on this staff. So he's going to coach the running backs, with Tony with the quarterbacks, with Joe Sloan and Tim Rattay having the inside and outside receivers. That kind of completed the offensive side of the ball. The one hole in the staff that we still have right now is the defensive coordinator. After David had been here for a couple weeks, he had the opportunity to go back to Houston as the defense coordinator. And his family lives in Houston, and for him, it was hard for him to have to move his family, his wife and his children, and this made a very smooth transition for him. There are a couple other people that had tried to hire him before that he had turned down. because he was going to stay here, but he just said he really couldn't say no to the opportunity to keep his family in Houston and not have to move them. So all of a sudden the defense coordinator position opened. I have talked to a number of people, but one of the things that I kept running into were coaches that wanted to wait until after signing date because of the young men that they had recruited, and they wanted to be fair to the school that they were at. And instead of trying to take them out of the pool, I made the decision to kind of slow down on the defense coordinator position. We had Jeff Kuntz working with the linebackers and Ronnie in the secondary and Stan up front. And so that is something that I would imagine here in the next couple of days we'll have that finished and we'll have that filled. But the main thing that I was trying to do right now was make sure that we did not short ourselves from a recruiting standpoint. As I talked about kind of the days and what all filled them up with recruiting and getting in the high schools and seeing the coaches, it made it very difficult to do both, because every weekend we've had a recruiting weekend where we've had a number of athletes here on campus. So I'm very, very hopeful that I can have that position wrapped up here in the next couple days. But there's certainly some excellent candidates that are out there. Well, the 2 graduate assistants we have will remain. They will both be here on the staff. And then, with recruiting, we'll get an opportunity to talk about it a little bit more on Wednesday. But I'm really excited right now about the class that's starting to come together. Really excited about it. It's starting to take shape. And with signing day on Wednesday, I think right now every coach is crossing every finger and every toe he has pretty much as we can get through Wednesday unscathed. Because right now I think this recruiting class is really important to us. And right now I feel really good about the young men that have made the verbal commitment to be here. And we'll talk a little bit more about them individually and what excited us about them on Wednesday. So trying to be as thorough and brief at the same time. Brief is not something I'm very good at. Try to be thorough. At least I'm 50%. I got one of the two. What questions could I answer for anybody? What questions could I take?
What's been the biggest challenge, Skip, that you've had to overcome since being there?
I think the recruiting part of it is being behind, is not having just here's the recruiting list, but you're behind. Players and parents all talk about the relationship. As a head coach, you only get one visit anyway off campus. You're only allowed to go see a young man one time. So it's hard in that one meeting to fill a year's worth of time and trying to get to know people and having them feel comfortable with you. It's easy to try and get to know them, but having that solid foundation and relationship when it becomes decision-making time is probably one of the biggest challenges we've had recruiting-wise. The biggest challenge I think we have right now is getting to know our team. Not knowing what we have. We're out recruiting without knowing how good are our defensive backs. We haven't been out on the field with them yet. How good is our offensive line? Well, 4 of them just graduated. I can tell you one. I can tell you the right guard because I've seen him on film. But the rest of them who you don't have a lot of film on, there's a big unknown. And that's probably the biggest transitional piece right now for us as a staff, is just having the opportunity to get to know our players and what their strengths and what their weaknesses are, so we can build our offense and defense around those strengths and weaknesses. So I am really looking forward. We met this morning for about 4 hours as a staff. We have our first winter workout today, where this is going to be the first opportunity. Later this afternoon, we'll get a chance to get out on the grass with our players. And the winter workout, obviously you're not allowed to have a football there, but you can do agility type drills with your team, and we'll start to be able to put them together a little bit more. Because right now, the only evaluation we have is the eyeball test. What they look like when they walk in the door. So I'm looking forward to getting out on the grass with them later this afternoon.
Skip, the fact that Tim and Sloan and Jabbar don't have a lot of full-time, none.
Right.
College assistant coaching, in their resume. How much of a concern was that, and how much of that has been kind of set aside by what you've already seen from these guys?
Well, I think a little bit of both. Obviously, you don't want a whole team. As I talked about, all the different variables you're looking for in a staff. You want some of those younger guys that are hungry, that are go-getters. There's obviously a difference with experience and pay, and that you've got to be able to make a staff salary. You've got to hit your staff salary pool. So I think what you're looking for in those young guys, and I say young, new guys, inexperienced inexperienced guys. I think you're looking for somebody that truly has a desire to be here. I think you're looking for somebody that's got that hunger, that passion. I want to get on the road. I want to start recruiting. Every coach you hire is not going to be a 32-year seasoned vet that you're hiring to be your coordinator. You're looking for guys that kind of offset that dynamic, that staff dynamic, because you don't want a lot of young guys, but you don't want old guys either. I have found that those young guys are normally the guys that are your recruiters, your go-getters, the guys that are in kind of playing planes, trains, and automobiles to get to wherever they got to go see all these players, and they relate extremely well with players. And so with each one of them, you can sit down and talk about, even though Joe Sloan is inexperienced, it's not his first time around the game. He played the game, very familiar with him, know him as a person, his character, what type of young man he is, having had him be a graduate assistant for me for 3 years. He's been around it. He knows how the system works. He knows how we want to do recruiting and organize that. He knows offensively. I mean, he brings an awful lot of experience, even though this is his very first job. Tim Rattay, you could say the same thing with all those backgrounds being about Louisiana Tech and playing the game for 10 years. He's not fresh out of college, even though he's considered an inexperienced coach. I think playing the game for 8 years, especially at the quarterback position in the National Football League, says something about his knowledge of the game. He's extremely intelligent on the game of football. He's been around it. And as I said, I don't know anybody that brings more character to Louisiana Tech than what he does in the way that he's represented this. And then with Jabbar, it's the same thing. Even though he's a new coach, he's been a high school coach. He's run his own program. He's coached the offensive line, the defensive line. And as I said earlier, the biggest asset to me when I interviewed Jabbar Jalouk was about his relationships with people. It was watching him interact with people, take his players up under his arm, hold them accountable, make sure they do everything the right way. But I think that is one of the things when you look at what he's done as a high school football coach in New Orleans. I think for everybody that you talk to, just unbelievably glowing reports about Jabbar Jalouk, the type of man he is, the type of person he is, but what everybody says is the type of ambassador he's been for Carr High School and the job that he does with the young men that play for him. So even though it is 3 inexperienced coaches, I think they all have a lot of experience in their own rights.
Coach, can you talk a little bit about going into spring practice and really putting a premium on this football program? As you said, you're really unfamiliar with kind of what you have outside of what you've seen on tape. So I'm assuming those couple of weeks in March and April are going to be crucial to how successful you guys are going to be next year.
Yes. I think even going one step further, I think the month of February, the 6 weeks before we have to go out on the grass, I think these winter workouts are going to be critical just to see where we are and what we have. So you're out recruiting, not really knowing what your biggest needs are on the football team. And that's where having some stability with a Jeff Kuntz and a Stan Egan help you a little bit, because they can tell you a little bit about it. And Damon in the weight room can tell you a little bit about their strengths and weaknesses. But I think us learning for ourselves what our players can do by position out on that field, agility-wise, we'll get a much better picture of what we're walking into with spring practice. Once we do start spring practice and start implementing the offensive and the defensive schemes, I think there's 2 things that are going to go with that. One, we've got to get them not just taught, but we got to get them to master it. But the other thing is, being a new staff, I think if you're ever going to make a mistake, you want to err on the side of not doing enough, more than doing too much. Because when you hit that, you get to a law of diminishing return, and then they start being robotical and they're not 100% sure what they're doing. So we're going to start with a kind of like a skeleton offense and defense and put it in and make sure that we can get our staples down. Make sure that we've got the base offensive and defensive calls down to run. Then by the time we get to the fall, we'll get a little bit more exotic with some of the different things that we're doing. But we got to make sure we have our staples down and what our nuts and bolts are going to be for the O&D. But yes, it's going to be critical. Yes, sir.
Has it been at all a drawback not having a defensive coordinator on the recruiting trail? People asking who's it going to be, what type of defense you plan to run?
No, at this point, I've been I know what I want to do defensively. I know what I want to do, and I'm trying to find the coordinator that's going to fit that. And that's why we can still talk about what we're looking to do, how we're looking to do it. It's very hard when you look at the conference that we're in. It's very hard to say, oh, we're going to be just a 4-3, because as soon as the formations start, 4-3 is gone. So whether you're going to call it a 4-2-5, whether you're going to call it a 4-3, play a nickel personnel, a lot of that's going to be predicated upon what the offenses do as well. And I don't think it has been a hindrance at this point from a recruiting standpoint. Nobody has told me no because they don't know who the defensive coordinator is. I have not had that situation at all. And having Ronnie Bradford as a secondary coach, Jeff Kuntz as a linebacker coach, and Stan Egan, all the positions are covered. So it's not like a young man saying, well, I don't know who my position coach is. I would think that would be a very hard sale to bring a young man in here when he doesn't know who's going to coach him.
In terms of the coaching staff coming together as a whole, what's that process like? How does it take to streamline everyone and to have the chemistry be there when you guys, like you said, just sat in a room this morning and trying to bring everything together?
Well, I think part of that starts in the hiring process and making sure that you're bringing good people in here that are going to get along with everybody. And as you're doing your research and making your calls on different people that you were looking at, staff chemistry was a question that you ask. How is he with the staff? Is he a chemistry guy? Does he get along with everybody? Is he part of the team? Is he a loner, et cetera? That's part of what you try and recruit to as well. And I know that guy. But then right now it's more just trying to mold everybody together. And so, this morning we were in there for about 4 hours as a staff meeting this morning, our first really big, long staff meeting where we're trying to cover everything and where we're going right now with winter workouts, walk-ons, spring practice, signing date, trying to get everything together, and we'll do it again tomorrow morning. We've got probably another 4 hours slated for tomorrow morning where we're going to cover every member of our team, just where they are academically, injury-wise, weight room, effort. Like I said, the biggest challenge we have right now is getting to know our players.
Matt Moore's intimate knowledge of the former staff's offense with his relationship with Tony Franklin, what did that play into his hiring?
A huge part. Like I said, when you look at not only the knowledge of him knowing the offense and being in the offense, but also playing at Texas or coaching at Texas Tech where he taught the offense, and that was one of the things that made him one of the leading candidates. And then as I talked to Rick Stockstill and everybody that had worked with him, they were all very complimentary of him as a person, as a coach, as a staff chemistry guy. They were all the more you dug into it, the more excited I got that could definitely be an opportunity for us. And I think he's turned out to be a tremendous recruiter, but I think the things that you talked about were my first attraction. You whittled the pool down in a hurry to say who are the guys that have been in this offense, taught this offense, and coached this offense, and that started your staff salary pool, and Matt Moore was one of the first ones that kind of came to mind that everybody talked about and that I pursued.
Coach, you talk about recruiting. I know you can't go into specifics about specific players, but in Northwest Louisiana, Shreveport-Bossier area, you've done a heck of a job of getting a couple of guys that are committed that will be signing with you guys on Wednesday. With that being said, can you talk a little bit about the area and what you've seen in that Bossier-Shreveport area and the kids that are coming out of there that may have an impact on your football program, maybe not just this year,
right,
but going into the futures?
We've talked about our home area has got to be I-20. We got to dig our heels in Shreveport, Bossier, Monroe. There is some great football played along this I-20 corridor up here in the northern part of the state. When you talk about really the way I've seen it is kind of the I-20 corridor and the I-10 corridor is really what is kind of what constitutes the strongest football schools in this state. And there's a lot of schools down on I-10, going along I-10, but I think this is home. It's the closest area. But I was really impressed going in and out of these high schools along this northern corridor up here. Like I said, I spent 2 days over in Shreveport going in and out of high schools, doing those home visits in the evening. But when you look at the programs in this state that are in the playoffs that are competing every year, there's a number of them from Shreveport and from Monroe. And I think there's some of the stronger programs in the state, and I think this is where it needs to start. This is where we need to dig our heels in, know everything about them, get on them early, start recruiting them early. I'm really excited about junior recruiting because, as I said a minute ago, that's already started. the letters going out, the emails going out, that's all started for next year and trying to identify who are the guys that are going to be difference makers. And I think every year there's going to be guys that come out of both Shreveport, Bossier, and the Monroe area, and this is where we got to start. This is where we got to make home. There was one young man that we're recruiting that is from this I-20 corridor that was not recruited by the previous staff. That's not right, wrong, good, bad, and different. But I don't think that can happen in the future. In the future, I think we have to make this home. We've got to know everything about every player on this corridor.
And speaking of that, along the I-10 corridor, Jabbar obviously is somebody who opens the faucet to that I-10. I mean, how much of an effect can he have in such a short period of time? Do you think he's going to have an effect this signing day?
Well, we're going to recruit the whole state. I mean, and the I-10 corridor is definitely the huge population mass when you look at this state going across that way. And that's where Jabbar Jalouk does bring an awful lot, because he brings knowledge of New Orleans and the schools down there and the relationships he has with coaches. I think he's going to make and has made a huge impact. I don't know if that's going to result in 20 guys signing, but when you look at the athletes that he is recruiting out of New Orleans, he's recruiting some people that have a chance to be a difference maker.
Who's more popular, Jabbar in New Orleans or Tim in Ruston?
It would be a competitive race, to say those two. Both of them are like traveling with rock stars. So, I mean, I think both of them, either one of them, when you walk into a school with them, it's like, I'm with him. Yeah, I'm with Jabbar. But I think both of them have not only great names and reputations, but they've earned them. I mean, they're great people, and they've earned those reputations, and they're well thought of in those areas. And I think it's really neat to see the admiration and respect that people have for two guys like that in their home areas. And I think it's a real compliment to them, to both Tim and Jabbar, for the way that they've lived their lives and the difference that they've made in people's lives and people that have that type of respect for him.
Coach, I tell people that Jabbar knows everybody in the city of New Orleans. Would you agree with that statement? Talk about your experiences.
I probably shouldn't put this title on him, but I call Jabbar the sewer rat. I mean, because he knows where everything in that city is. He knows everybody in that city. Like I said, from administration to teachers and all the faculty and the students, and to the woman working behind the desk when you walk in, and she jumps up and runs up and gives them a hug, and it's just really impressive to see the way that people embrace him in that community. But he knows pretty much everybody down there, and I think the coaches down there have great respect for him, because they have great respect for how his teams played, the way his players competed, and he did it with class.
Do you have the language down yet?
Not yet. I can learn it. I can't speak it. I mean, I can understand it. I can't speak it yet. Yes, sir.
You had mentioned you only get one shot as a head coach for off visit. With the coaching change like this, what are some of the things that you have to do to either go into a kid's home that's already committed, or to go into a new kid's home?
You're not just going in and selling. It's not like sit down and going, okay, here, let's talk about a couple things. I want to talk about the academics. You've got to have a bonding time in there. You can't walk into somebody for the first time you're meeting mom and sit down and start selling. I mean, I said this before, we're not used car salesmen. And if we go in with the mindset that we've just got a presentation that we're going to present in this hour that we're in the home, I think you're going to lose a lot of people. I think you have to have the opportunity to get in the home, get to know them, find out where they're from, what their background is, what they do for a living. You've got to start to formulate a relationship before you can ever sit down and start trying to sell Louisiana Tech. You have to sell yourself first, and you have to get to know the people in whose home you're sitting in.
Coach, clearly the season is quite a ways away. It'll be here before we know it.
Agreed.
Your first home game in Conference USA, new conference, you got Tulane coming in. Got to ask you, in-state rivalry, things along those lines. You're used to that conference. You've been there before. Just talk about a little bit how that game could really set the tone for y'all's season and get fans here in Ruston excited about being Conference USA playing a team that's from Louisiana?
I love geographical rivalries. I love them because it's not only going to be our fan base, but it's going to be their fan base. Everybody gets passionate about it because this is a debate that'll go on at the water cooler at work. It'll go on, at the restaurants when people are out eating. There will be a lot of jabbering, a lot of talk, and I think that creates a lot of excitement and a lot of energy. Obviously, that is a huge game for us, not only because it kicks off Conference USA and our conference race, the conference race, but it's an in-state game right down the corridor. We battle with them in recruiting. We're going to have the opportunity to play them on the field, and I think being just a couple hours away, obviously, is going to create a lot of excitement. But I'm excited about that game. From my understanding, it will be the only year that we have the opportunity to play them because after this year, they'll be leaving the conference. And so it will be kind of a one-and-done game that we're going to play here in Ruston, but I'm really excited about having the opportunity to play it. And I think for our fan base, it'll create a lot more excitement and energy than somebody might have from the West Coast in some of the games that we've had to play in the past. I think Southern Miss will have that same type of geographical rivalry to it as well. And we get to play both of those at home.
You mentioned you don't go into a house and put on a sales pitch, but there has to be a little bit of salesmanship here in Ruston. I noticed that, you guys have become pretty popular at the basketball games. You're supporting Michael White's Bulldogs, for instance.
And they're having a great year, too. They're having a great year. Compliments to Coach White and his team.
Do you feel like that it's part of the process that you want the community, Louisiana Tech Ruston, to make sure that they are buying into you and seeing that you're a part of this community, not just someone holed up in a coach's office?
Well, and I'm not there for that reason. I'm there because I want to support the basketball program. That's what I want. I'll be at baseball games. I want to support the baseball. I've been to women's basketball games. I've been out to eat here in the Ruston area. I mean, this is the community that we're going to live in. This will be home. And so I want to be involved in the community. I'm not going to live in an ivory tower. I want to be involved. I want to be active. And I love going to sporting events. Like I said, I've really enjoyed watching that basketball team because I think they have gotten a lot better from when I first saw them in December to the way that they're playing right now, the way they played the other night. I think they're really improving as a basketball team, and I think he's done a great job. So I'm not there for those reasons. I'm there because this is the community I live in, and I want to be involved with it. But it is, for me, it's been great. I grew up in a small town. I grew up in a town that was very similar to this. We didn't have I-20 running through the middle of it, but a town very similar to this in Fayetteville, Arkansas. There was about 25,000 people when I lived there. There was one high school, just like Ruston High School. There was a university there. At the time, Arkansas was about 14,000 students. So for me, this is very comfortable. I like this. This is how I grew up.
If you need a seat upgrade, Dave Nitz could have done.
I may need one of those. I enjoy standing because I can't sit still. So I stand there under the basketball goal. I have a hard time sitting still and just sitting in a seat and watching the game.
Concerning Conference USA, you've been in this league when you were in East Carolina. What is the competition for fans? What is the difference between Conference USA and what we're coming out of the WAC? What do you see?
Well, this is a different league than I played in 3 years ago, than we coached in 4 years ago. It's already, all the conferences have had some incredible changes, and it's constantly evolving situation with the different conferences and allegiances and where everybody's going. I think having the opportunity to play in the conference that we are, especially being placed in the West Division, I think is huge for our fans. When you look at, Dallas is 4 hours away, and you start talking about your trips are no longer to the West Coast 4 times. I mean, your trips are going, but you're going to have bus trips. And all of a sudden, you're going to have the opportunity to maybe bus to a Southern Miss, to a North Texas, to a Rice. And for me, I'd much rather take a bus trip than I would a plane trip, because it also means that for our fans, they're going to have the opportunity to travel to the away games as well as come to the home games. And I think that's something that they haven't had that opportunity for the last number of years while we've been in the WAC conference. So I think the distance, or somebody say frequent flyer miles, will probably be the biggest difference. And I think it'll be a huge boost for our fans. It'll create some geographical rivalries. And I'm excited about being in the West Division.
Anything else?
All right, great.
Thank you all very much. I look forward to seeing everybody on Wednesday. Thank you.